Hello, I'm Askar Shailiv and you're watching news from Kazakhstan. The failure of autopilot and altimeter. The captain of the aircraft made several fatal mistakes. The aircraft itself was covered with ice and was landing in bad weather. The General Prosecution Office voiced the details of AN-72 crash in Shymkent on Tuesday. All 27 people on board died, including top officials of National Security Committee's Border Patrol Agency.
Making an outside turn right. What are those? Mountains at this height? These were the last words of the crew killed in a tragic crash of the military plane AN-72. According to the investigation, the air crash was caused by multiple failures and errors. In particular, Captain Marat Nurahmetov continued flying the plane manually due to the autopilot malfunction. Moreover, his co-pilot was at the controls, which is prohibited if there are passengers on board. The radio altimeter failed to provide the correct height after 2 minutes and 40 seconds of takeoff. Moreover, the ground proximity warning system was not on, thus the flight relied only on barometric altitude measurement. Unfortunately, the barometer also failed and showed wrong numbers while the plane was approaching the ground. According to the General Prosecutor's Office, for some reason the captain ignored flight operations officers' information about the local pressure and went for landing in poor weather conditions. AN-72 engines were working until touching the ground, and landing gear was in the extended position. The investigation will give a legal assessment of the actions of ground services and the command of a military unit regarding their compliance with flight regulations. Furthermore, the international investigation request was sent to the authorities of the Ukraine, where the AN-72 was repaired last year.
Bisobo residents demand compensation. Recently, it was revealed that the developers of Bisobo in Karaganda were reprieved. The heads of contractors and developers who constructed the building escaped the criminal liability due to amnesty dedicated to the 20th anniversary of Kazakhstan's independence. Meanwhile, state officials who commissioned the building are on the dock. Find out the details from the next report.
During another hearing on Monday, the tenants of the collapsed residential building in Bisobo district learned that all construction workers, along with several contractors who participated in the construction of the residential complex, went unpunished due to the amnesty. The Special Prosecutor's Office instead decided to hold liable the officials involved with final acceptance of the building, including the former mayor of Saran, chairman of State Committee, and his deputy. Their attorney is confused why Altenbekov and Ivanov are the ones to blame, while those pardoned were not even recovering damages. Even a person who pleaded guilty and the case was terminated solely by an act of amnesty is still held liable for damages. Therefore, I am inclined to ask about the fate of those individuals. The situation is quite controversial, says the attorney. Those who pleaded guilty of lousy construction have been pardoned, while others who only commissioned the building are kept in the detention center. Those people have already pleaded guilty. They admitted their fault in the tragedy during the trial. Yet, Your Honor, do you consider those people guilty? The defendant Ivanov continues to claim that he could not possibly know about all the violations made during the construction, just like the people who bought apartments in this building. We could not know and tell that the building would collapse, and why don't you take an action against them? All of them are involved in this criminal case, including the designers, geotech surveyors, and individuals who gave their expertise. During the hearing, one of the tenants of the Bisobo residential building agreed that the amnesty exempts only from criminal liability, yet financial liability is still on them. Therefore, she decided to reconsider the list of defendants in her civil suit. Another tenant victim requested the judge to release the officials on trial, saying that Ivanov and Altenbekov cannot be blamed for the fact that concrete mix used during the construction of the building missed 60% of cement, and the foundation was thin and unstable. Instead, it's the fault of the construction workers and foremanship, who have been released due to the amnesty. The victim drafted a letter of appeal during the hearing requesting to release the officials and to punish the construction workers and contractors.
Residents of unfit house in Ataral still don't know whether they will be able to return back to their apartments. For already a month, the residents of the emergency multi-story building are forced to live in a school and nursing home. However, state officials continue to feed people with promises referring to the results of their expertise, which is not yet complete.
We measure blood pressure every day and it is irregular. We have a pregnant woman in poor condition. There are many elderly here and children often get sick too. Last December, several apartments in the residential block caved in and collapsed into the basement. To avoid accidents, around 90 families were evacuated and accommodated in state institutions. Officials set up an ad hoc committee that was supposed to give their expert review on the building, but has not done so yet. Only recently, officials announced the completion of the inspection process. We were waiting for the expert review on the building from Astana after January 20th, but there is no exact date for the review to be ready. Perhaps we will get it by the end of the working day or tomorrow, or maybe within the next 2 days.
Corruption-related crimes are continuing to be identified in Atarau. On Tuesday, financial police reported on embezzlements in water supply and water treatment sector. However, the numbers were not as high as the day before.
Lately, the region has been shaken by numerous scandals around embezzlement of millions of dollars out of the state budget. This time, the suspicion fell on the construction department's officials and the contracting company's executives. The cost of pipework routing performed by Altyn Tubek appeared to have been charged up by $60,000 allocated from the budget funds. Another criminal case instigated by the financial police against the Atarau Agri Service deals with misappropriation of $20,000 by the company's management. Criminal proceedings have been initiated against the director and executive officers of the Atarau Agri Service on suspicion of entering into a fictitious contract with Norin for performing the construction and repair works in the administrative building of Atarau Agri Service and for transferring funds to the amount of $20,000 to the account of Norin with knowledge of no actual works performed under the contract.
Kinjitay Atagulov, the deputy head of the Regional Department of Organized Crime Control, was arrested in Karaganda. As his brother reported, Atagulov is charged due to the operation which was initiated several years ago when police detained a criminal suspected of the murder of a journalist. The detainee was later acquitted and wrote an appeal against Atagulov, claiming that he planted drugs on him.
As far as I remember, my brother was a lieutenant back then. I know for sure that there were higher rank officers in charge. This makes me wonder why they have laid all the blame on my brother. On Tuesday morning, Kinjitay Atagulov was detained in the special prosecutor's office, where he was earlier invited for interrogation. A group of over 20 people formed by the arrested policeman's friends, colleagues and family members gathered at the building in an attempt to find out what happened inside. However, the prosecutors refused to comment on the matter, invoking the investigation secrecy. He is suspected of criminal case files falsification, resulting in grave consequences under Part 4 of Article 348 of the Criminal Code.
President Nazarbayev is continuing the staff reshuffles within high-ranking officials. On Tuesday, the decree of the head of state appointed the president's assistant and security advisor, as well as the governor of Akmola region.
The national leader appointed Major General Kairat Kazhamzharov as Secretary of the Security Council of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Previously, Kazhamzharov was in charge of the financial police and recently held a position of Akmola region administrator. In this regard, Kasman Muhametov, the deputy governor of Akmola region since 2009, has been promoted to fill in the vacancy.
State servants are to provide their income declarations. Tax Department recommends them not to protract the process. More details next.
The Tax Committee expects government officials to file their income declarations by March 31st of 2013. However, practice shows that very few of the civil servants willingly reveal their earnings to the public. 2001. Khairat Maldasiitov, Shymkent Administration Head, $2,096,538. Askar Mirzakhmetov, South Kazakhstan Region Administration Head, $35,512. Askar Kerimov, Atarau Administration Head, $33,152. Orazgildy Kairgeldinov, $31,494. 2010. Serik Taukbayev, Usk-Kamenogorsk Administration Head, $26,077. Archimet Mukhambetov, Akhtubinsk Region Administration Head, $20,746. Meanwhile, according to official reports, the mayor of Almaty, Ahmedjan Nisimov, earns a modest salary of $4,300 a month, which the politician Bolat Abilov perceives as the figure for public distraction. It is a matter, of course, that no property is registered on the officials because all the government employees choose to hide their actual assets. Any state official, be it a local administration head or a minister, is in fact a lot richer than he seems. Nuratan Party was the main initiator of the public exposure of private assets back in 2009. The dominant party seems to have far-reaching plans on making the earnings disclosure a mandatory procedure for government officials. We must develop a healthy tax-paying culture that currently serves as the foundation for other major market societies. Our party does not only support this course, it also takes initiatives and makes rational proposals that will hopefully be adopted by the deputies after careful deliberation. However, the People's Deputies from the Nuratan party hold off on revealing their own income. Only 10 out of 81 parliament members agreed to disclose their earnings to the public.
Different oil companies in Kazakhstan have different salaries, and it is normal as everything depends on the industrial factor. This statement was made during the briefing on Tuesday in Astana by the chairman of the Social Protection and Control Agency of the Labor Ministry, Sirik Bisakaliyev.
The wages of all oilmen cannot be the same because the profits of different companies vary. Wages depend on productivity. Some types of oil are easily refined while others contain a lot of sulfur and different elements that need to be separated. Therefore, salaries could be different as well. The head of the committee noted that 17,000 inspections in more than 1,200 foreign organizations last year revealed over 4,500 violations of the labor code, including 127 cases of wage disparities. The list of violators also includes major market players, while 92 oil companies hold salary arrears in the total amount of over $6.6 million to more than 9,000 workers.
K+ channel, a Respublika newspaper and the Agency of Journalistic Investigations is launching a new project, 101 illegal privatizers of Kazakhstan, which will include those who sold the country. The management of 3 mass media offered to name those who benefited the most, being in the close circle of the president, who used their cunning and corruption to take over the national wealth of the country, namely oil and gas fields, enterprises, land plots and buildings. The new program will not only talk about the well-known personalities, but also about their authorized individuals who don't appear on public, but who contributed a great deal.
The project will be implemented by 3 organizations. Newspaper Respublika will come up with profiles of dishonest privatizers, which will serve as a base for salaries of articles exposing real owners of the country. K+ will launch a special program to keep viewers informed on the project's progress. The Agency of Journalistic Investigation, with the help of Western colleagues, will also be involved in the process of looking for illegal privatizers. The initial list is proposed to include 7 people: Karim Masimov and his subordinates, Vladimir Kim Bulatu Timuratov and his sons, Bolat Nazarbayev, Aset Yisekeshev, Imangalitas Makhambetov with his son-in-law, and finally Dariga Nazarbayeva. 93 other candidates are expected to be added by readers and viewers, who are also encouraged to submit any information they have on the illegal activities of the aforementioned politicians and others engaged in illegal privatization. People really like the idea, and they even propose names to be added to the list, like Musin, Mashkevich, and others, who illegally privatized some of the public property. I think that the reaction of the people is positive, considering that we have a rather limited access to the audience.
Justice Ministry declined to register the National Association Committee to protect political prisoners. However, activists are intended to start the work under the NGO Arka Suyeo, or support. The members of the new association already presented the Zhanauzen list, which resembles the Magnitsky law. Take a look at our next report for more details.
The list includes Nursultan Nazarbayev, Aslan Musin, Timur Kulibayev, Askhad Daulbayev, Serik Maganbetov, and Ural Sarbayev, the former mayor of Zhanauzen. In total, 200 names of Kazakhstan's senior officials ended up on the so-called Zhanauzen list, a local version of the U.S. Magnitsky Act, listing all illegal actions possibly committed by the authority figures. Public activist Jasar Alkwan-Shalin explains that it took a year to create the list with the help of lawyers and other activists. 4 copies of the list will be sent to the OSCE, the UN, and other international organizations. The size of the list is not surprising due to the enormous scale of repressions. Creators of the document say their registration papers for the new Committee for the Protection of Political Prisoners in Kazakhstan were recently rejected, as if there were no political prisoners in the country at all. The Ministry of Justice explained that the law does not allow duplicating the name or national symbols of the state, but that means over 3,000 other associations are breaking the law, says activist Mikhail Sizov. Alga Party and the Movement for Free Democratic Elections have made a lot of attempts during the last 10 years to register the organization and a separate national association. Of course, for obvious reasons, we were regularly receiving registration rejections, but we've never seen such an absurd and outright crazy refusal. Eventually, activists agreed and settled on a shorter name of the Almaty NGO, KplusTV, translated as support. The new entity is joined by the members of the public foundation Aman Saulik, representatives of the banned party Alga, and others. The wife of convicted politician Vladimir Kozlov, Aliyat Uzbekova, is also part of the new committee. I do not want to engage in public politics. My only goal is to help my husband. I can do it through this public association. The association KplusTV was registered in the end of 2012. Its members promised to fight for the release and other rights of political prisoners.
Meanwhile, Russia celebrated the Dissident Day on January 22nd. This is the day when, in 1980, the Nobel Prize winner Andrei Sakharov was detained and exiled to Gorky. Our reporter recalls Kazakh dissidents, their reasons for their prosecution, and the current situation in Kazakhstan.
In Soviet times, dissidents were referred to as the fifth column. Many renowned artists and scientists such as physicist Andrei Sakharov, writers Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and Vladimir Voinovich were considered members of this group. The head of KGB, Yuri Andropov, created a special-purpose fifth department specifically to persecute them. Soviet dissidents lived among recognition, uncompromising fight for human rights, hope, desperation, freedom, and exile. They sincerely believed that one day people in the USSR will be free. Karyshal Asanov, who lived in Soviet and later independent Kazakhstan, also had a dream of freedom. In 1992, he spent 2 months in a temporary detention center for his article Don't Trust the President's Smile, published in a Russian newspaper and allegedly discrediting Nursultan Nazarbayev. The criticism of authorities was punished by years of harassment and persecution. I spent 3 months in prison and did not even have a lawyer. They took me to various mental institutions and could not prove I was ill. After a failed trial, new criminal cases came to surface. One of them involved Hassan Koja Ahmed, who took part in the 1986 uprising. Investigators tried to exhaust the man mentally, resorting to constant threats. In the end, the activist was sentenced to 4 years in prison for anti-Soviet actions. These days, however, Koja Ahmed is not a member of the liberal opposition. People have no resources to fight these days, so I do not think things will change for the better. What if someone like Stalin comes to power and persecutions will start again? The new wave of repressions gave way to new dissenters. However, they cannot be referred to as dissidents, says human rights activist Evgeny Zhovtis. Dissidents do not call for government overthrow, neither do they use political methods. In democratic countries, dissidents' disagreement may be manifested in democratic ways like rallies. Dissenters are never persecuted for their disagreement and expressed opinion, while their actions are not viewed as anti-government. On the other hand, in the authoritarian and totalitarian regimes, civil activists and intellectuals are viewed by the government as enemies of the state. Perhaps nowadays it is much easier to become a dissident than before. All you need is a point of view and a clear expression of dissatisfaction with the current situation in the country. Simply flipping the bird to a motorcade with officials inside will apparently do as well.
Environmentalists are continuing their struggle for Zail Alatau. They're against the construction of resorts around the metropolis. To recap, on December 29th of last year, the government issued a decree on the development of ski resorts of international scale near Almaty and Almaty region. Currently, environmentalists are analyzing each article of the documents. Meanwhile, mountain climbers already open new sports objects in Shimbulak ski resort. The rope town presented on Tuesday even has chances to claim a place in the Guinness Book of World Records.
The environmentalists of Zeleное Spasение, or Green Salvation Society, sound the alarm after reading the government decree issued before the New Year's on the development of world-class ski resorts in Almaty region. The environmentalists hold it against the officials, starting from procedural violations of the document and ignoring international conventions to leading the situation to an environmental disaster. In fact, officials decided to include the entire territory of the Ilia Alatau National Park into the development plan. This will cause huge environmental changes and deterioration of the environment in Almaty and Almaty region in general. The city barely breathes because it's overcrowded already. The fertile land along the mountains is already developed. In the meantime, far away from the smog in the open air, Maksud Jumayev, the climber who conquered all 18,000 years, optimistically and cheerfully presented the rope town. It demonstrates that not only athletes but everyone can test their endurance here. The mountaineer is aware of the plans by Almaty authorities to build a new ski resort of Kokjailao. However, he has not yet decided whether to support it or not. Should all this be organized by world and European standards, then I say we're heading in the right direction. However, if we get stuck in the past by saying that this is nothing but a scam and destruction of nature, then we simply choose to stay in the Stone Age, where we are now. Nevertheless, any progress must be justified. The director of Shumbulak ski resort, Yerzhan Yerkimbayev, also talks about the fact that mountains shall make a profit and revive spirits. The businessman is making plans not only for this rope town, but he also intends to establish additional trails for skiers. Skiing is a very profitable business these days. We have a natural potential to develop ski tourism in Almaty and in the entire region. Take Shumbulak Resort, for instance. The numbers only attest to its progress in the last 3 years, promising that Almaty region would become a center of ski tourism in the nearest future. Environmentalists claim that they're going to get the officials to cancel out this decree. They're going to fight for fresh air on behalf of all Almaty residents, despite the good mood of climbers and campers resting in an ecologically clean place.
Kazakhstan is not yet ready to transfer to plastic cards, at least. That's what bankers and businessmen say. The latter asked to postpone the installment of payment terminals at least for 1 year. Their argument is that mass audits will kill the small businesses. Details next.
For the first time, the owner of the grocery shop in the Krasny Trudovik settlement of Almaty region, Jean Sedik, heard about the new law from the journalist. The grocer, however, seemed puzzled by the POS terminal's intended purpose, as the village residents are unlikely to use plastic cards for the trifling daily purchases. My clients always pay in cash. There hasn't been a single customer willing to use a plastic card. We also use cash to pay to suppliers. I don't see how plastic cards could fit in here. Thousands of small-scale entrepreneurs in rural settlements will become the primary target for inspections. The representatives of the National Enterprise Association are convinced that this will discourage undertakers from opening new shops, pharmacies or barber salons. A week after the new rules were introduced, they decided to write an appeal to the government. Before enforcing usage of POS terminals by all merchants, the officials should have analyzed the situation to determine the regions and industry segments relevant to the innovation. Otherwise, it makes no sense, because even if the merchant is ready to use POS terminals, but the customers are not willing to adopt the change, the banks will have to uninstall the equipment in 3 months due to non-exploitation. The association members agree that while introducing the card payment system is a sensible and profitable move, the entrepreneurs are not yet ready to comply with the new standards. They're asking the government to postpone the law enforcement until January 2014. The government has not mapped out the process of transitioning to the POS terminal scheme. We do not know whether it will be introduced through the bank's supervision or just follow the free sale path of cash registers requiring tax department registration. The plastic boom seemed to have caught bankers unaware with the shortage of POS terminals, consumables, spares, and software. The equipment purchase volume was based on demand, analyzed and calculated on an annual basis. It is no surprise that the banks were overwhelmed by the vast number of entrepreneurs requiring urgent assistance. Meanwhile, the rural businessman Jean Sedik is planning to lease out his shop, thus staying out from the POS terminal installation affairs.
Unless internet is available in remote areas, nothing could be said about the development of the local content. This is the conclusion of experts made on Tuesday during the first conference of Kazakh language websites in Astana.
The 24-year-old Ildar Kudaybergenuli is a beginning blogger and a professional software developer from Almaty. Several weeks ago, the young man came up with his own blog platform and now wants to make it a Kazakh live journal. Ildar believes that the development of Kazakh internet has stalled due to the audience frequenting the same foreign resources and clear stagnation of local ISP monopolists. The main features like publishing blogs and commenting are in place. That's it, but it needs further development. We need a page ranking system for the users to upvote specific blog entries, see the top 10, or share the ones that we like. There is also a demand for a media player. I personally do not understand why they still do not have it. Kazakh Telecom is a well-funded company and should be able to afford it all. Astana's media center hosts regular meetings attended by active members of the Kazakh internet community. They discuss anything from poor design to weak content to the transition to Latin alphabet and government funding of Kazakh internet projects. All these, however, are minor issues compared with inaccessibility of the internet to the majority of the country's population. The state would do much more for internet development by expanding its access network across the country rather than just increasing investment and piling up government contracts. Kazakhtelecom and other ISPs need to provide internet to the most remote villages. The constitution says we all have equal rights, but in fact it is not the same when it comes to access to information. The monopolist internet provider, though, cannot say when the large Kazakh-speaking audience in the villages will have access to the World Wide Web. Even Tleuhan Abuli, the head of IT department at Kazakhhtelecom, does not have a clear answer. Unfortunately, the Kazakhhtelecom spokesman does not have a time frame for the project's implementation. Thus, it is all up to God, as always. The conference was organized by the ruling party Nur Otan, which also plans to collect recommendations of participants regarding the future development of Kazakh internet and send them to appropriate state agencies.
This is all for now. Thank you for watching. Stay well.